The cabin smelled like cedar and silence, and I had chosen both on purpose. I found it on a Thursday afternoon in late October, after months of driving through mountain roads on weekends, telling myself I was just looking, not actually buying, just looking. But the moment I stepped onto the porch and heard nothing except wind moving through the pines, I knew. I wrote the check before my rational brain could talk me out of it. The realtor smiled like she'd seen this happen before. She probably had. I was 37 years old. I had spent the better part of my adult life being the one who answered the phone, the one who showed up, the one who made things work when everyone else couldn't be bothered. I was the younger sister, the responsible one, the quiet one, the one my mother called first when there was a problem, and the one my brother called when there was something he wanted. Those are two very different kinds of phone calls, and it took me longer than I'd like to admit to understand the difference. The cabin was mine, fully mine. I had saved for 4 years, declined vacations, driven a car with a cracked dashboard and a passenger window that stuck, eaten lunches I packed instead of bought. Nobody helped me. Nobody offered to. But the moment the deed was signed and the keys were in my hand, I made a decision. I was not telling my family, not my mother, not my brother, not my sister-in-law, who had a talent for turning other people's good news into a conversation about herself. I told my 2 closest friends. I told my coworker, Dana, who had listened to enough of my family stories that she basically deserved a producer credit on my life. And I told absolutely no one else. I spent 3 weekends at the cabin before my brother called. It was a Saturday morning in November. I was sitting on the porch with coffee, watching frost, still clinging to the grass in the shade where the sun hadn't reached yet. My phone buzzed on the armrest. I looked at the screen. My brother. I let it ring. He called again 2 minutes later. I let that one ring too. Then a text came through. Call me. Important. He always said it was important. A few years ago, important meant he needed me to drive 3 hours to help him move furniture because he'd thrown out his back, the same back that was apparently fine the following weekend when he went skiing. Before that, important meant his wife needed someone to watch their dog for 10 days while they went to Mexico. I had watched the dog. The dog was fine. I was not reimbursed for food or veterinary costs when the dog ate something and needed a late-night emergency visit. I finished my coffee. I watched a hawk circle over the tree line. Then I called him back. Hey, he said, and his voice had that particular warmth it only had when he wanted something. I had learned to recognize it the way you learn to recognize the sound of a car that isn't running right. You don't have to think about it. Your body knows before your brain catches up. Hey, I said. So listen, he said. Rachel and I have been talking. His wife. We need a reset. Things have been stressful. The kids have been a lot. Her sister's wedding planning is taking over our whole house. We need to get away somewhere for a bit. That sounds hard, I said, because it was the honest thing to say and also because I was curious where he was going. We found out you have a cabin. The air in my chest went very still. Who told you that? I said. It wasn't a question. My voice came out flat in a way that surprised even me. He paused, just long enough to tell me he knew he shouldn't have brought it up that way. Mom mentioned it. She said Dana told her at the church thing last month. She wasn't trying to make it a big deal. Dana hadn't told my mother anything. My mother had gone through Dana's social media, seen a photo Dana had posted of the 2 of us on the porch with our coffee cups, and reverse searched the location tag. My mother did not know how to program the DVR but had become surprisingly skilled at online research when she wanted to know something. I had learned this about her too late. I see, I said. It's just a cabin, my brother said, and the warmth in his voice shifted slightly, the way it always did when he sensed resistance. A little more casual, a little less patient. It's not like we're asking for much. 2 weeks. Maybe 3, depending on how Rachel's feeling. We'd bring the kids, obviously. And Rachel's sister might come since she's been having a hard time with the whole wedding planning, and her sister's fiancé is basically living at our house right now, so it'd be easier if he came too. How many people? I said. What? How many people are you describing right now? I mean, it's a cabin. There's probably room. How many people, specifically? A pause. Maybe 9 or 10. 11 tops. The kids count as partial. Children do not count as partial. I had no idea where that logic came from, and I chose not to explore it. We'd only need it from the 22nd, he said, of December. That's 4 weeks away. Right. And the holidays are coming up anyway, so it'd be nice to have somewhere to go that isn't Mom's house. You know how Mom's house gets? You're always saying you need space from the family dynamic. He laughed a little. This would solve that for both of us. I want to stop here for a moment and explain something. Because I know the obvious question is, why didn't I just say no? Why didn't I say, right then, on that phone call, no, that is not going to happen, and end the conversation? It's a fair question. If you are someone who grew up in a household where your feelings were yours and your boundaries were respected, it probably seems very simple. But I grew up in a household where saying no meant 3 weeks of cold dinners, strategic sighing, and my mother's particular talent for finding ways to mention your failures in unrelated conversations. I grew up watching my brother get what he wanted by simply persisting, wearing people down the way water wears down rock. Not dramatically, just constantly, until the rock is just a smaller version of itself. I had been saying no to my family in small ways my entire adult life, and what I had learned was that a verbal no on a phone call, without documentation or consequences, did not actually stop anything. It just moved the conversation to the next phase, where they argued with the no until I exhausted myself explaining it. So I did not say no on the phone. What I said was, let me look at my schedule and I'll get back to you. And then I hung up and spent the next 45 minutes making phone calls of my own. The first call was to the property management company I had enrolled the cabin with when I bought it. It was a short-term rental management service, the kind that handles the logistics of who can access a property and when. I had signed up partly for income on weekends I wasn't using the cabin, and partly, honestly, mostly because it meant there was a third party with standing on my property. A professional third party with paperwork and a process. I explained the situation. The woman I spoke to, whose name was Gretchen, had heard variations of this story before. She was calm and efficient and said she would make a note on the account that no guests were to be admitted without written authorization from me and that she would flag the dates my brother had mentioned. The second call was to my attorney. I had a family law attorney I had used for an unrelated matter a couple of years earlier, and I trusted her. I explained what had happened. She told me to document everything, every text, every call log, every voicemail. She also told me something I wrote down and kept. If anyone entered the property without authorization and refused to leave, that was trespassing, regardless of the family relationship. A cabin is not a family cabin just because you are family. Property law does not have a feelings clause. The third call was to Dana, who said, I knew it, before I even finished explaining. My brother texted me twice over the next week, once to ask if I had checked my schedule, once to send a photo of his kids with the caption, "These babies need mountain air, Auntie." I responded to both with some version of still figuring things out, which was not a lie. I was figuring things out. I was figuring them out very carefully. On the Friday before the 22nd, my brother texted, We're packing up tonight. See you tomorrow afternoon. The kids are so excited. I was sitting at my desk at work when that text came in. I read it twice. Then I texted back, I haven't agreed to anything. You cannot come to the cabin. He called immediately. I did not answer. He called again. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 4 minutes long and covered a range of emotions from confusion to betrayal to a quiet, measured statement that I was being selfish and that family didn't keep scorecards. I listened to all 4 minutes. Then I saved it. My mother called 20 minutes later. Her opening line was, What did you do to your brother? I told her I hadn't done anything, that I hadn't agreed to anything, and that a group of 11 people could not stay at my cabin without my permission. He's your brother, she said, as if that were a legal document. I know who he is, I said. You have a whole cabin just sitting there. It's not sitting there. It's mine. I paid for it. Nobody said you didn't pay for it. Her voice took on the particular tone she used when she wanted to seem reasonable. We're just saying that family shares. That's what families do. I had heard this my whole life. Family shares, which in practice had always meant I shared and others benefited. I had shared my car when my brother's was in the shop, and he had returned it with the gas light on and a dent in the rear panel he claimed was already there. I had shared my apartment once, for what was supposed to be 2 weeks, when he and his wife had a brief separation, and he had stayed for 2 months and left without cleaning the bathroom. I had shared my time, my money in small amounts that never came back, my emotional energy, my holidays, my patience. What I had not shared was the one thing I had finally built entirely for myself. I'll talk to you later, Mom, I said, and I ended the call. I drove to the cabin that evening. I got there around 9. I sat by the fireplace with a glass of wine and a book I had been meaning to read since spring, and I was asleep by 10:30. The next morning I woke up to frost on the windows and birdsong and nothing else. At 12:17 in the afternoon, I heard a car on the gravel road. Then another car. Then what sounded like a third. I stood at the window and watched my brother's SUV pull up, followed by a minivan I recognized as belonging to my sister-in-law's sister, followed by another car I didn't recognize at all. Doors opened. Children spilled out. My sister-in-law's sister's fiancé was apparently a large man who immediately began stretching in the driveway like he had just completed a long journey that entitled him to the property. My sister-in-law was pulling luggage from the back of the minivan. My brother was walking toward the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, head slightly down, chin out, in the posture he used when he was prepared to talk his way through something. I did not go to the door. I had already texted Gretchen at the property management company that morning, once I heard the first car. She had told me the on-call property representative, a man named Marcus, was available and would come to the property if I needed him. I texted her, "I need him." My brother knocked on the door. "Hey, we're here. Can you open up?" I stayed where I was, by the window, watching through the glass. His wife was arranging children on the porch steps. The fiancé was looking up at the roofline like he was assessing structural integrity. My sister-in-law's sister was on her phone. My brother knocked again, harder. "Come on, it's cold. The kids are cold." I was aware that watching from inside while people knocked on my own door was a strange feeling. Not comfortable, exactly, but not the guilt I had expected. What I mostly felt was a kind of clarity, the kind that comes when you have made a decision all the way through and you are simply waiting for it to land. Marcus arrived 18 minutes later. He drove a company truck with the property management logo on the side. He was calm and professional in the way that people are calm and professional when they have done a version of this before. He parked behind the third car, effectively blocking the driveway, and walked toward the porch with a clipboard. My brother turned. "Who are you?" "Property management," Marcus said. He didn't elaborate. He looked at the group on the porch. "Are you registered guests at this property?" "We're family," my brother said. "Okay," Marcus said. "Are you registered guests at this property?" My brother looked at the door, then back at Marcus. His jaw shifted. "My sister owns this place." "That's correct," Marcus said. "And she hasn't authorized any guests for this weekend. I'm going to need you to. Can you just call her? Can you just get her on the phone right now and we can sort this out? Because I think there's been a miscommunication." "There hasn't been a miscommunication," I said. I had opened the front door. I was standing in the doorway in my flannel shirt and my socks, holding my coffee mug, and I was looking directly at my brother. The porch went quiet in the specific way that porches go quiet when something has shifted and everyone knows it. My brother looked at me for a long moment. His expression cycled through several things. Surprise, then something that wanted to be anger, then something that wanted to be wounded. He chose wounded. He was better at wounded. "So you were just in there the whole time?" "Yes," I said. "You let us drive 4 hours. I told you not to come. You said you were still figuring things out. And then I told you not to come, in a text, the night before, which you received, and then came anyway." My sister-in-law made a sound that was somewhere between a sigh and a scoff. Her sister had put her phone down and was watching with the expression of someone at a movie who is trying to decide if she likes it yet. The fiancé had stopped examining the roofline. "I have kids in the cold," my brother said, and gestured at the children, who honestly looked fine and were more interested in Marcus's truck than in the conversation. "I know," I said. "You should take them somewhere warm. There are hotels in town." His expression settled into something I recognized from childhood. The look that came right before the leverage move. The pivot to moral injury. "After everything I've done for you," he said, voice quieter now. The way things get quieter when someone wants them to land harder. "After everything this family has been through together, this is what you do." I had spent 37 years on the receiving end of that sentence. After everything, I had been waiting, without knowing it, for the moment when I could stand on my own porch in my own socks, holding my own coffee, and simply let it pass me like weather. "Marcus will help you with directions to town," I said. "Drive safe." I stepped back inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched my brother stand on the porch for another 2 minutes. He said something to his wife that I couldn't hear. She said something back. Then he walked to his car. Not the way people walk when they have accepted something, but the way they walk when they are planning the next conversation. I knew that walk. I had been bracing for it my whole life. What I had not expected was what happened the following Wednesday. I was back home, at my actual apartment, when my attorney called. She had an interesting tone, not alarmed, but precise. The kind of precise people get when they have something to say and want to say it correctly. My brother had, apparently, filed a document with the County Property Records Office. It was a document called an affidavit of interest. a claim that he had contributed financially to the purchase of the property and therefore held an ownership interest. The contribution he cited was a loan from 4 years earlier. The money he said he had lent me was $1,500, which I had borrowed briefly and repaid in full within 6 weeks. I had a bank transfer record, proving both the receipt and the repayment. He did not have a promissory note, a written loan agreement, or any documentation that the money was intended as a property investment rather than a short-term loan. What he had was a county clerk willing to accept a filing. My attorney explained that this type of filing, while largely unenforceable without legitimate supporting evidence, was a form of title encumbrance. It could complicate a future sale or refinancing, and its purpose was almost certainly to create leverage, to pressure me into negotiating, to give him something to take back. She also told me it was potentially fraudulent. I gave her every bank record I had. I gave her the text thread. I gave her the voicemail where he said, "We were just asking to come stay," where he called it a cabin that was just sitting there, where he made no mention of any financial stake because 4 weeks ago there hadn't been one. My attorney filed a formal response with the county contesting the affidavit, along with a letter to my brother's home address, notifying him that any future fraudulent filings would result in civil and potentially criminal action. She also looped in a contact at the county property fraud unit. It is a small unit. They are, she told me, not overwhelmed with work and are reasonably responsive. A property fraud investigator contacted my brother the following Monday. My mother called me that afternoon. Her voice, for the first time in my memory, did not have the temperature of someone who was about to manage me. She sounded genuinely uncertain. "What's happening with your brother?" she said. "He said there's an investigator." "Yes," I said. "He said you filed something." My attorney filed a response to what he filed. He filed first. Silence. "He told me he lent you money for the property," she said, less certainly than she would have said it a week before. "He lent me $1,500 4 years ago. I paid it back in 6 weeks. I have the bank records." Mom. I kept my voice even. Not cold, not angry, even. "He filed a false document with the county to try to claim ownership of my property. That is not a family disagreement. That is fraud." She was quiet for a long time. My mother is not a bad person. She is a person who learned, somewhere along the way, that family meant protecting each other from consequences, and she had been practicing that for so long she had stopped questioning it. I don't know exactly when she learned it. I don't know if she ever thought about what it cost the people who weren't being protected. "I didn't know he was going to do that," she finally said. "I know," I said, and I believed her. The county's review of the filing took about 3 weeks. At the end of it, the affidavit of interest was formally voided due to insufficient basis and material misrepresentation. My brother received a formal notice that further fraudulent filings could result in criminal charges. He also received, separately, a civil demand letter from my attorney for legal fees and costs associated with responding to the filing. That letter was for $4,200. He did not pay it immediately. What he did was call me, for the first time since the day on the porch, on a Sunday evening in January. He didn't have the warmth in his voice this time. He didn't have the wounded tone either. He sounded smaller. Not sorry. Exactly, I don't think he had gotten there yet, but smaller. In the way people sound when the consequences have arrived and they are real and they have no one to argue with about it. "I don't understand how we got here," he said. "You filed a fraudulent property document?" I said. "That's how we got here. I meant before that. I meant all of it." I thought about what I wanted to say. I thought about the car with the dent, the bathroom, the dog's emergency vet bill, the 4-minute voicemail, the children I was supposed to feel guilty about in the cold, the $1,500 that became a property claim. I thought about 45 minutes on a cabin porch making phone calls while frost was still on the grass. "I know you think I've always been available," I said. "I think I let you think that for a long time. That's on me. But the cabin is mine. I earned it. I saved for it alone. And I am allowed to have something that is just mine." He didn't say anything. "The demand letter is real," I said. "My attorney will work with you on a payment structure if that's easier. But it needs to be resolved." He said he would talk to his wife. I said that was fine. I meant it. He did pay, in the end, not all at once, but over 3 months, in installments that my attorney confirmed and documented. We did not speak during those 3 months, except through her. My mother and I had a few more conversations, quieter than our old ones, more honest. She told me once, on a Wednesday evening in February, that she thought she had probably asked too much of me over the years. She didn't elaborate on what she meant. I didn't push her to. Some things don't need to be fully excavated to be real. Spring came late that year, which felt appropriate. The first weekend I drove up to the cabin in March, there was still snow on the north-facing slopes, but the porch was dry, and the sun came through the pines at an angle that made the whole world look like it was made of light and shadow and nothing else. I had replaced the lock the previous fall, after everything. New deadbolt, new key code on the gate. Nobody had the code except me and Gretchen at the property management company. I sat on the porch with coffee and watched a woodpecker work at a dead snag about 30 yards into the trees. Methodical, patient, not asking permission. I had built this place into my life slowly, one saved paycheck at a time, while carrying everything I had always carried. I had not waited for someone to hand it to me. I had not asked for it to be shared. I had not explained myself or apologized for wanting it. Wanting something that is yours is not a character flaw. Setting a limit on who can take it from you is not cruelty. I had spent most of my life believing otherwise, and what it had cost me was a long, quiet, kind of exhaustion I hadn't even fully named until it started lifting. The woodpecker stopped. The trees were still. The coffee was hot, and I drank it slowly, because there was nowhere else to be, and nothing I needed to do. And the morning was mine in the fullest sense of that word. I had chosen this on purpose. All of it.